So is the scrum the most overpowered part of rugby, or is it something else? Now the spoiler here, kind of hinted at in the title, is I think there's something else that is very overpowered at the moment that needs changing, but the scrum I think does need discussing as well. Now this will be a really interesting one to see what you guys think. First of all, I've got to say, I actually think that rugby on the field is in a pretty good place. I like the product, it's really exciting, but that doesn't mean you can't improve it. And this one's been prompted by that amazing destruction by South Africa in November of Ireland especially, where the scrum just obliterated the basically British and Irish Lions pack front row. It was really impressive stuff. But was it slightly overpowered? Would I be saying this if I was a South African fan and enjoying that? Well, maybe not, I don't know, but I'd like to think the stuff I say is fair, and even if my team was dominating every single scrum, I think it still could be tweaked as well. But again, let me know what you think. Now again, I think it's really important to keep the scrum battle as a key part of rugby. I think it's fascinating, and really one of the interests of rugby to me is the fact it is so complicated with lots of different bits, and you can enjoy lots of different facets, so it's a game within a game. That is true. Now initially the scrum was seen as a way of restarting play, and it still is, but it's also developed into a real battle, and I think you can have both. But I think it's worth talking about some certain parts of the scrum battle that is actually probably just a bit unfair. Now let me go through my points, let me know what you think of them, and I'll also make some suggestions as to maybe some ways forward just to change it slightly, and then finish with that facet of rugby that I think really is overpowered that needs changing quite a lot. Now first of all, with the scrum, you don't get penalised for losing other contests. For example, you don't get a penalty given against you for missing a tackle. The ref doesn't go, oh, that's a missed tackle, there's a penalty, there's 2, there's 3, that's a yellow card for missing tackles and not being very good. You don't get a penalty for losing a line out as well, etc. I mean, that would be absurd. But you get a penalty for losing a scrum. So that's the first point to think about. Is it fair to lose a battle in rugby, even if you're desperately trying or not even doing anything wrong? So I think that's the first thing to think about. Is it fair to penalise you if you're desperately trying not to do anything against the law? And let's expand that further on point 2. There aren't really many alternatives. If you're losing that physical battle, if you're getting pushed back, the only legal option is to stop being pushed back, which is very much easier said than done, if not impossible with that momentum if you're losing already and you're overpowered. So what could you do? You could continue to stay bound and straight, but go backwards. Simply go backwards in a straight line until the opposition pushes you all the way over your own line. You concede a try. I mean, that would be impressive to see and very hard, so you're probably going to give away a penalty as you split up anyway, so it's not really an option. And then point 3, it does seem a bit unfair and overpowered to have scrums being taken again and again from penalties if a team is clearly in the ascendancy, because points 1 and 2, there's not a lot you can do about it, and you know you can just keep on going till you get more penalties. Now they have changed it where you can't call a scrum from a free kick, which I think is something, but I think maybe there needs to be something done about this, because you could just keep calling scrums from penalties until the other team starts losing players from yellow cards, because it's just building up and up. And that goes on to point 4, saying that yellow cards from scrums don't really solve anything. Yes, they punish the other team, but if they keep on calling scrums, the scrum is going to get weaker and weaker. Of course, there are different options they can do from replacements. You know, they can add an extra forward on, they could put, say, a centre on the scrum to try and mitigate it, but essentially you're going to be getting weaker and weaker, and the whole process snowballs. Now, that's not to say if a team deliberately does something wrong in the scrum, you shouldn't penalise it, absolutely, but it just seems there's not an alternative. If a team doesn't want to be penalised, there's not a lot they can do if they're losing the scrum. You could say, well, that's what they deserve, they're losing the scrum, but there's no other area of the pitch where there's no other option. Even in a maul, which is probably the closest to a scrum, there are options of stopping it legally. You can sack the maul before it starts. If the maul collapses under its own momentum, it's not automatically a penalty. You can hold it up over the line, you can drive through the middle of the maul, so there are ways of legally stopping a maul and still being pushed backwards, but in a scrum there probably isn't. Now, of course, scrum battles are more complicated than this. They are very technical, so let me know in the comments what sort of variations you'd like to see, what's fair, what's not fair. But let's talk about some solutions. So if we're accepting that points 1 to 4 are fair, and I'm suggesting they are, not saying you have to agree, but I'm saying they are, what could be some solutions to mitigate those? Maybe adopt some or all of these solutions. Let me know what you'd think, and what solutions might you put in place if you think scrums are a little bit overpowered. So point 1 is to limit the number of scrums you can take from scrum penalties. Yes, you get a penalty from a scrum. Maybe you can take one more scrum and then that's it. So maybe you limit it to 2, maybe 3 scrums at most. And even if there's no legal way to stop a scrum, at least a team being beaten know there is a limit to how much they can be beaten in the scrum. Point 2, something you could do is if a team is being beaten legally, maybe you allow them the out of going backwards a set amount of meters. Would that work? I just don't know, potentially, but maybe you say you can be pushed back a maximum of 10 meters. It's used in age group rugby to have a limit to what you can be pushed, although that is more for safety. So could that be something? And point 3, you could say that there are just no yellow cards from repeat scrum penalties. Maybe you can say that the scrum penalties could contribute to a team yellow when it's added to other penalties, but not just repeated scrums going on and on until there's a yellow. So maybe some or all of those options could be potential solutions. Let me know what you think, or come up with some better ones yourself. I'd love to know your ideas. So that's my thinking around the scrum. There's been a lot of talk about it recently, and I just wanted to put in my ideas there and see what you think. But let's move on to what is the most overpowered area of rugby at the moment, and that is the attacking kick chase, the high ball kick chase from the attacking team. It just seems a bit too easy, if you like, to get the ball back, and it's just too tempting to keep whacking up those kicks rather than do some other options. Now again, just like the scrum, I do love a high ball contest. It's a great part of the game, but I just think we're seeing too many, and that is indicating it is too powerful. Now World Rugby had good intentions because they wanted to have more of a contest in the air, because what teams had started to do is putting up a big wall of blockers, walking back as kicks went up, just blocking any sort of chasers, which was clearly against the spirit of the rules. But I think they just went a bit too far, because they went to say you have to actively get out of the way. So it's not just a case of holding your ground or staying still. You literally have to part like the Red Sea and allow chasers to get after that ball. And the effect of that is that attackers just have a free sprint at the ball. They can go hell for leather at the ball, jump up and just slap the ball back. They don't even have to try and catch it. They can just slap the ball back, and because you're attacking, it means your players are mainly behind you, so a slap back is pretty safe. And the defender, if they try and slap it back, there's probably not many people behind them, and they can get in all sorts of trouble. So you have a defender who's trying to catch the ball normally, an attacker who could be trying to slap the ball back with no one in their way, and it just seems a little bit of an easy way to get the ball back, and also potentially dangerous, where attackers can just fly at the ball, go for a slap, and the defensive player is put in a pretty bad decision where they've got eyes on the ball and there's people just flying at them. And that's meaning other maybe shorter players aren't getting so much of a chance. And I just think, yes, it is the most overpowered thing in rugby at the moment, and it just needs to be dialed back. World Rugby, tried to change this with good intentions, but unknowingly created another problem. So just to finish on, my 2 solutions for making this a bit more balanced is to 1, still make it illegal to form a wall of players, 2 or more players blocking an attacker chasing a kick, but do allow individual players to either stand their ground where they were originally or actively hold their lines, as long as they're not deliberately moving into the way of those chasers. I think that creates just that bit of uncertainty for the chaser, where they have to work their way through those players to get to the ball, and just protects the catcher a little bit more. And the second one, which could be a little bit controversial, is that I think that both players, attacker and defender, need to be actively trying to catch the ball, with 2 hands basically, and not just going up to try and get a wild slap back, creating this dangerous situation that does favour the attackers a bit more. So in conclusion, I do think that attacking kick chase is the most overpowered at the moment and needs that attention, and there need to be a few tweaks, I think, to the scrum laws just to bring it back a little bit, so we don't get these repeat penalties where the team losing the scrum battle just doesn't really have any choice but to give away penalties and yellow cards. So could that work? Could that bring the game back into balance, where we see a little bit of everything? And that's where I think rugby is at its best, where these fans get all sorts of exciting situations, and we just get that heady mix of lots of different sorts of athletic contests that really make rugby special. So plenty to get your teeth into there. Let me know what you think I'm onto something, and where you think I'm missing something, I really would love to know your feedback. Pop all those comments down below if you like these sorts of videos. Thank you to everyone who's been commenting and subscribing over this busy November period, and I'll catch you next time.